Welcome to this week's episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say I'm here with Ake Johnsson. He's our guest of podcast number 64, and he is here today. And we're going to do a reverse podcast, if you like. Jan has kindly agreed to flip the tables, and he is an avid listener of the podcast. And to interview me on, we'll find out. We've done almost zero prep for this, so I'm looking forward to what the questions might be. I suppose my experience with the podcast. So as we close out 2020, I thought this would be a fitting way to sort of round out the year. So Jan, I hand the tables over to you.
Yeah, I've been following you for quite a while, so I think it could be nice to find out who you are and why you're doing the things you're doing, and maybe we could possibly look into why you don't do it in a different way. You're an electronic engineer, and you spent most of your career at some of the major radio and television producers in the UK with communication and broadcasting logistics, as I see it. And you seem, both from what I've been seeing and what I know from you, that you have less ambitions to use digital algorithms than to inject oxytocin from a leadership platform.
Right, yeah.
For the Human Being blog, you have interviewed dozens, even hundreds of gurus and management consultants after having read their books, and without though being excessive ambitious to be critical, you have helped them presenting the aspects and beliefs of business management and leadership in an attempt to spread their message. And beneath the surface of the personal, private side, you have both the ambition and the ability to resolve inner mental conflicts. You're letting one side of your Janus face look inward, so you can challenge and resolve traumatic imprints. By the way, that's how we connected and together got some kind of feeling about what evolution in reverse is all about. Is that conclusion something you can agree?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I just
you have any immediate comments to?
Well, immediate comment is I just looked up oxytocin on Wikipedia, and I just wanted to check I was right. Yeah, it's the hormone we release. It's
that's the hormone which make us human and make us like to stay together.
Yeah, that's right. And
I can feel how you're spreading oxytocin this moment.
Right. Okay. I'm bonding.
I'm hugging. One of the most important hormones we have.
Yeah. This is a virtual hug, a virtual oxytocin injection.
Oh, I thought you used it every day.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that's right. I think that's a good way of putting it. I think spreading oxytocin and building trust, building safety in the workplace is. I think
you can't build trust without oxytocin.
Okay. All right. Well, bonding then, shall we say?
So when I look back, when you read the book to prepare an interview, do you have a personal basic model to match the author's the interviewee's ideas?
Do I have a model to match? Like, I'm not sure I understand the question.
You kind of have a frame where you put them and say, hey, that's what I expect.
No, I don't. I mean, probably consciously I do, right? I probably run a whole bunch of biases over what I'm reading, and I'm sure to some extent I do categorize them as I go along. I certainly don't go in with that frame though consciously. I'm not thinking, oh, this is a person who's writing about X. I have these expectations about them. No, not particularly.
No, so much that what you expect from them. But do you normally, to give you an example, when I comment on your pods, I normally mirror myself in my own life. Do you have kind of a way of mirroring what you have been reading in yourself?
Do I have a way of mirroring what? Do I have a way of mirroring what I'm reading in myself?
Using experience, knowledges, etc., to evaluate what you've been reading. Do you have a?
I suppose sometimes I naturally do and try and relate it to my own experience. Yes.
I will come back to that later in other questions. So another question I have: do you research anything about the interviews book before you make your pod?
Well, I try as much as possible to read the book. Sometimes I don't always read it, the whole thing. Sometimes I skim read it. But yeah, I mean, nearly always I read the book. Yeah. But I don't do. I know a lot of other podcasts.
Yeah, that I understand. You read the book, but you don't do any research.
No, and I know. No, and sometimes
how the book is selling, where it's selling, if it's selling.
No.
Many times it's hardly published when you make the interview.
Yes, no, I don't do any research like that. And the other thing I don't do is I don't go and listen to other podcasts that they've done and other interviews they've done. I think if I were doing this full time, I might do a bit more of that.
Yeah, no, because that's something I'm missing is this kind of to understand which are the target groups of the interviewees, and the on top of that, of course, you can say is it relevant, but the estimations of potential buyers for a book like the one you are talking about.
Yes, no, that's a good point. I don't really do that. I don't really think about where this person might be coming from, what biases they might have. I don't do any of that. I just read the book, and I kind of highlight the things that I think are interesting. I like to delve in a little bit more into that.
Yeah,
or a little bit more into that. I don't do much analysis of the book, I wouldn't say. No.
Right. Another intricate question is: do you think it's possible to develop and establish a few criteria to evaluate, for example, the message of a book?
Yes, I suppose.
I mean, so when if you do it during or afterwards, I mean, to evaluate the message, to assess whether it's a book for specialists or generalists.
No, and
to evaluate the degree of applicability, the book's design and semantic qualities, agreed on opportunities to make improvements. Yeah. You can see I'm.
This is great. Yeah, I don't do any of that. No, so I do. To really what I do, I read the book as really I'm just sifting for potential conversation topics. Yeah, what might I have an interesting chat about? Where do we might have a common interest? I don't. So I read them very informally, and I suppose I treat them fairly informally when it comes to the conversation, because my aim isn't really to provide a critique of the book in the podcast. It's to have a good conversation with the author, and the book is just a bit of a hook.
But a good conversation about what?
Yeah, and that's interesting. So I never really know. And I don't, and I did. So interesting. So when I started on this podcasting journey, I did this podcasting course, and a guy called Brian Rose, who's a very successful podcaster, and I didn't take any of his advice around designing the conversation. So he talks about having this sense of an arc for the conversation, a kind of beginning, middle, and an end, and how you want to guide this conversation over time. And I don't do any of that. I just sort of dive in. Like I may well have read the book, but it's not. So I don't attempt to design the conversation as much as, I mean, maybe subconsciously I'm doing some of that, but not consciously. I just kind of walk into it, and I have the aim of having a good conversation and a deep conversation to the extent that I'm able to, and that's about it.
Yeah. No, I can see what you're saying. I mean, I had the same idea when I'm playing saxophone. I say I want to improvise, and when I'm starting for teachers and training courses in improvisation, we say you know the basics. If you don't know the basics, you can't improvise. That's why I'm asking about these questions here. I mean, I'm not aiming for a very square and monitored interview, but in the background, that I'm asking for your background more. I'm not criticizing your behavior, your artistic ambitions, but there must be some framework behind. I mean, as a listener, as a reader of the book and the interview, I have my needs, and these needs are very often: is it applicable in my situation? Who more is reading the book? Is it a book I can give to my employees, etc., 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 etc.? It's very well written, but please, couldn't you extend that part of the book more, because that's where it is getting exciting, etc., etc. So that's what I'm after here.
Yeah, no, I can see your point, and maybe I could put some deeper thought into.
And I would a good point also could be just this kind of having a few criteria where you in a friendly way discuss with the author this kind of a message, the what do you call it, the degree of applicability. If you think where he should like to improve his book, etc., etc. Many times you hear them saying, "Yeah, I have a new book on its way." Yeah, but why do they have a new book on its way? Because there's something missing in the book you just presented.
Right. Yeah, I see where you're getting.
Yeah. Okay, back to Richard. More than the of a special events in your life which make you continue to make these interviews. You say you made 140. What kind of special events in your life has made you go so deep into interviewing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are there any special events? I suspect to some degree I've become addicted to it. I've got some kind of a process addiction now.
Yeah, but of moments in your life when these addictions.
It's a good question. Why do I maintain this this addiction? Why am I still hooked? I'm certainly driven by the fact that.
You couldn't be addicted to anything, could you? But there must be a reason why you just get addicted to this.
Yes, I think there is something about, and maybe it's because I'm still on this path of like digging and what can I resolve next? What's the next? Interestingly enough, what's the next compulsion I can let go of? What's the next addiction? Maybe it is this podcast is the next one. But and I guess as long as I'm on that journey, there's this part of me that wants my reality to reflect what's going on inside of me. Like, how can I help others to deepen their own personal inquiry? How can I help others to open up? How can I help others to create environments that are more conducive to people going deep with themselves, healing, bringing light to others? Like that. So I suppose it's something in that. I suppose as long as I'm doing this work inside myself, there's a part of me inside myself. As long as I continue to do this work inside, there's a part of me that's going to want to encourage others to do the same thing. So I suspect that's the connection. And maybe if I stopped doing my personal healing work tomorrow, I'd stop with the podcast.
All right. But I mean, okay, there must be some reason why you just have, because you emphasized on management and leadership, managers, consulting themes. I mean, what we are talking about is more into the, I would say, almost health care.
Yes, well, that's right. And I think so. Why do I focus on the sort of management theme? I think, because it's just where I've landed, right? I love this phrase, bloom where you're planted, right? I happen to have ended up with a career in management consulting. I happen to spend a lot of time in those, those domains.
I think it's a good explanation.
I might as well bring the message to this group. It's as good a place as any. I suppose if I was a pastor in a church, or if I was I don't know, big into, big in the horticultural world, or I don't know, I was a banker, I'd probably try to, who knows? But so I think because I've ended up in this environment, that's where I'm choosing to, to help transform to the extent I'm able. So I suppose that's why there. And also I think the other thing I would say is that we do spend an awful lot of our time in work, right? Certainly those of us who are working.
Exactly.
So it's a huge, it's formative, right, for us. And one of the interviews I had recently was, this light bulb moment for me was, and the culture we create in our workplace is taken into the home. So, and of course all of these link in time and space, but who I am as let's say a manager or a leader or a worker is to some extent going to be who I am as a father, as a husband, as a son. So this all connects, right? So the greater the degree to which we can humanize the workplace, we're actually humanizing home life at the same time.
Okay, we are coming back to the same question later. Which let's say, which personal freedom did you have as a child, teenager? Was it conditional? Was it unconditional? Was it both, or did it shape you?
I had a huge amount of freedom. I think that's why. I mean, Pim Damore said this in my interview with him from Corporate Rebels, that one of the reasons he felt so strongly about transforming corporate culture was because he was very free as a kid. And so he wants to replicate that freedom, right? And when his first corporate job, he couldn't stand it because he had such little freedom. And I had a huge amount of freedom. But
was it conditional or unconditional? I mean, did they support the freedom? Were parents aware of your freedom, or they just neglected you? So you had a freedom which was, in a way,
I did experience neglect in other way. I certainly feel like I experienced emotional neglect, but that aspect of my childhood, I don't really see it as neglect. I do see it as sort of benign, sort of, how do you describe it? Sort of benign absence, if you like, because they deliberately just didn't get involved, right? They were like, just go play.
Exactly. You have exactly the same background as I had. I grew up on a university with parents who were working there, and they didn't give a shit because they knew the surrounding was so stable and safe, so they didn't worry. And I don't think they even were interested. So I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah, and and it is interesting that, I mean, it was a period in time where certainly I had more freedom than perhaps kids have today. And I think the generation older than me probably had even more freedom. But even within our village, my parents were particularly enabling of that freedom. Right? There were other families whose kids couldn't.
They were very liberal.
Very liberal in that sense, yeah.
Oh, yeah, in that sense. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. In your surrounding, were there things which influenced you to be the Richard you are? Surroundings, people, happenings, events?
Well, yes. I mean, so certainly all of the trauma that I experienced, which I've shared on the show at various times, shaped me, right? Shaped the addictions that I developed. So if that's what you're getting at, then yes, there's lots. So circumstances more than events, but kind of conditions, that I experienced as a kid that shaped me.
Yeah, I even did you meet people, or did you have idols or people around you which stimulated you and inspired you?
See, I don't not. I mean, yes, of course there would have been, but I think one of the things with being traumatized is I heard this on a podcast, is you get frozen, right? You get frozen at a certain stage of development, and I don't think I really emerged from adolescence to develop, really idols that I really cherish now until I got to my 30s.
You never had somebody who say, "I want to be him."
I did, but they've fallen away. So, like, for example, Peter Cook was a huge idol of mine. He was a British comedian, extremely funny, and he was a huge idol when I was growing up as a kid. And for a while I did, I was a stand-up. I didn't get very sort of far up the ladder, but I was a practicing stand-up comedian for a while, and he was certainly an icon, and so was Bill Hicks, Richard Pryor, right? These big names in stand. And I suppose what's interesting now is that it almost feels like a different Richard who had those idols, right? I can still respect them as comedians, but they really have no influence in my life now. And it was because at the time, the comedy was my escape, right? It was an escape from this,
okay,
what you're trauma state. And
what you're saying, in other words, was kind of a neurotic act out.
Yeah, it was a neurotic. Yeah, that's right. These were idols that were existed inside of my neuroticism. They didn't.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
but
so they
still, I mean, neuroticism can be, of course, if I take the upper hand, can be negative. But at the same time, you can also carry them with you, even if you leave the neurotic part of your life and remember the good sides.
Yeah, and maybe for some people they do, that can happen, right? They can do a lot of healing work and they can retain their idols. But I certainly, for me, as I say, I mean, I respect them. It's not like I've lost respect for them as comedians, but they don't play any role in my life as an influence.
No, all right. Do you have any driving ambitions?
Yeah, my number one driving ambition is to continue the healing process. I hesitate to say complete. I don't know if everyone can really complete their inner work in one's lifetime. But certainly to continue it, to continue to heal, to continue to mature. Those really are my driving ambitions. And there's something about gaining more freedom. And I suppose as I heal to a greater and greater degree emotionally, there's a part of me that now...
You still feel you have a way to go there until you put it all together?
Yeah, I think there's probably more to do, and then and becoming financially free is a big goal, right? Right now I have obligations, big financial obligations that keep me, so off. Very important. A big priority of mine is to make money, and right now, and
but you're not obsessed with making money.
No, not obsessed with it, but it's this persistent need, and I'm aware that
it's important.
Yeah, I'd love to get to a place where I have much more financial freedom, to the extent that I can follow my intuition to a much greater degree in terms of where I feel I want to put my energy to grow.
So if others. I put it another way, I mean, driving ambition. Let's say, what's your big passion?
Yeah.
It's really the same answer.
Same answer. It's the big.
Right.
Yeah, the big passion is to, number one, is to continue the healing process, and number, and there used to be this saying when I was in the 12-step rooms, right? Whatever you put in front of your recovery, you'll lose, right? So you've got to put your recovery first. Now they had a specific meaning for
Mm.
recovery. That
Okay.
was, abstinence from
Okay.
from whatever you're addicted to.
I mean, if you look outside
idea.
yourself, what kind of a passion?
So outside myself, ultimately, my big passion would be, for this show to really explode. That would be wonderful, right? If this became a sort of major cultural influence, that would be wonderful. I'd love to get to a point where what we're doing with First Human is we're working with a lot of other companies to help them evolve their leadership, evolve their culture, humanize as organizations. I'd love to continue to help others do it. And there's a big part of me that'd actually love to start creating organizations almost from the start, which have a lot of these philosophies embedded. So we grow organizations from the get-go with some of these principles. That's a big ambition of mine. And then something we've discussed a lot is this idea of creating a space, or maybe multiple spaces, where people come to heal. They can't in this holistic way that you and I have discussed, which involves trauma release, which is obviously something that you and I have got deep experience with, nutrition, breath,
putting a
social
number
interactions,
a number of natural things
the
together.
Body, pulling all that together to give people a healing experience.
Food, health, job,
all of that,
interest, environment. All right.
So that's a big part of what I'd like to see happen.
I will come back to another thing we have loosely discussed over a couple of weeks. That's the 5 factors of personality.
Oh, yes.
How they have influenced you. I mean, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. To which extent each of them has, apparently you are a very, you give impression at least we are an extremely open person.
Yes, very high open,
and conscientiousness, I don't know. Where are you?
I'm not super conscientious. I mean, I'm conscientious enough to get one of these shows out every week, and
I would say it takes somebody to make 140 interviews.
Yeah. So I guess I'm above average. I suspect on that, but I'm not super high. I'm not one of these guys who. And I've definitely. In fact, my very first serious girlfriend she would squeeze productivity out of every 30-second slot of the day, and I actually dated someone else who was like that. Who I remember we visited a museum once, and whilst I went to the bathroom, I came back and she was at the table waiting for me, and she'd written like 100 words of the book she was writing, in the 4-minute gap she had while I was in the bathroom. So I'm not at that level of conscientiousness, definitely not.
I had my own interpretation of openness and extroversion. I mean, I'm for example very open. I'm not. That doesn't mean that I'm very extrovert. Right. I can go a long time by myself, isolated, but I can still be open.
Yeah.
I don't know. How is your personality there with extroversion? Are you
very it's interesting. Yeah, I did the test and I was very high on extroversion. You might say, well, that seems pretty obvious given you're a podcaster and what have you. But
I'm very high as well, but I don't look for it. I would say I'm not driven by it.
No, and I said maybe I'm more driven by it than I think I like to admit I am.
All right.
But yeah, I guess I am pretty high extrovert. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And agreeableness, I would guess you are very high on agreeableness.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and see my scores. I wasn't as high as I thought I was going to be.
That's why I'm asking, because I'm a little insecure. I would guess, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as high as I thought I was going to be. I don't think I expected to be higher. I mean, I do pick fights from time to time. I'm not always probably, sometimes I think you've given me feedback on this podcast, I could disagree a bit more and poke at people a bit more. So yeah, I think there's.
That's what I knew I was low on agreeableness, but I didn't know I was that low.
Right. So you're low. You're super low.
I'm extremely low.
Okay.
But I always thought myself I would like to be a little less agreeable, but I don't need to wish that any longer. How about neuroticism? What's your own?
Yeah, really low on that. But I suppose the way that they define neuroticism is interesting, isn't it? Because they define it in terms of negative mood, right? And I've never been.
I mean, having been quite a few years in primal therapy, as we both have been, I think the neuroticism in a way is dissolved.
Is what? Sorry.
It dissolves the neuroticism. Being in primal therapy, being in.
Yes, I mean it does, but then I suspect that even if I'd done this before my therapy work, I wouldn't have been very high on their definition of like low mood and prone to depression. And see, that wasn't really me. I mean, my neuroticism expressed itself in addictions, not depression or low mood or irritability. It was all in addictions. So
I mean, addiction sometimes you use to avoid depression.
Yeah, that was my way of avoiding. Avoiding life, really. Well, certainly.
So what's the hen and the egg?
Sorry?
Yeah, is the question about the hen and the egg.
The hand of the egg, so I'm not...
No, the hen.
Oh, the hen and the egg, yeah, okay, yeah. Yes, so I don't think I'm a relatively cheery person, very low neuroticism.
All right, I don't know how much time we have left, but if we look ahead, the COVID has created a new world. I don't think the world will ever be the same again after COVID. And there are a couple of interesting things there which have caught my eye the last year. I did it long before that, but it has been emphasized now. I mean, for example, 5 to 10 big companies which dominate the global pharmaceutical business. They create the wealth and vast dominance in both healthcare, research, education for treating the 5 to 10 major symptoms of deadly illnesses we have. And the new paradigm will be changed. These illnesses won't be the main symptoms. The main symptom for most illnesses in the future will be aging, which is in a way is causing the previous major symptoms. So if we for example treat aging as an illness, I mean, which is causing cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, Alzheimer, etc. We will have a total new approach to how to live our lives. The interesting thing is not only big pharma, which are the negative factors. I mean, if you look at the global food business, exactly the same situation. 5 to 10 extremely big mega companies dominating the global business. And there we also can see and maybe faster a change of the paradigm shift. The young people today, I mean, extremely many are living in a way which you couldn't dream of 10, 15 years ago. So but still you can't see it very much in the shops, because more or less the food is the same, looks the same, but there is a change going on rapidly. Have you given this a thought?
Yes, I mean, I think
regarding to obviously your blogs.
Yes, I mean, my sense is that we've got two things happening at the same time. We've got this, increasing medicalisation of the population, right? As it increasingly,
exactly.
Increasingly, our food is being stripped of nutrition.
Exactly.
We're becoming weaker in that sense. And that's happening, right? And there are, of course, massive commercial interests in that growth, in that trend continuing. And we've got this counter movement of buy local, buy organic, reduce food miles, somehow get closer to the earth, focus on community, right? So these things are happening simultaneously, and I think that for me that will continue. It's the twin trend that will
Yes,
continue.
it's twin trend. Exactly. That's why I brought it up, because it's twin trend and they feed each other.
Of course, yeah. As we continue with mass production,
and if you look at these two areas, they cover the whole population. Everybody is depending on this. I spent too much time with it, but I looked into the employment of the American population. There is a population of 320 million people. About 170 million are working. Out of these 170 million working, there is about 40 million which are in the area where we are looking for consulting. We say 140 million of the working population are working in areas where we don't really need reach them, in healthcare, in governments, etc. And I mean, we need to reach 300 million. And we are looking for within 30 million, the books we are talking about. And then again, when I'm saying 30 millions, it's only a fraction of these 30 million who are really interested.
And when you say that in terms of people who are open to the types of ideas we're discussing.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Have you ever thought about that? I mean, how few people we're really approaching?
Well, in fact, I had a conversation the other day that this woman who's a professional in the media industry, and was remarking on the numbers for this podcast and was perhaps surprised that they weren't higher, but it was also reflecting on what we're talking about. These aren't mainstream themes. But yeah, my sense is that, yeah, as I say, this whatever we might call it, holistic movement, return to something that's more natural, more organic in all senses, is growing at the same time as the I suppose the corporatization of society is also growing. So yeah, that's the way I see it. And I think over the next 10 years we'll see. Actually, I don't. That's not sustainable, and we both can't, because to some extent that there is a zero-sum game there. You know, people have to choose between the burger and the carrot they grow in their backyard. So I suspect that one will, this can't go on forever. There will be a decisive shift one way or the other eventually.
And it's not only burgers and carrots. I mean, suddenly there is a new exploding markets of supplements.
Right, which is maybe the middle path, and that's something I engage in. Right, I mean, I can't always get a hold of the highest quality, organic produce. I don't have a homestead. I'm not making all my own food, so I do supplement a lot. And I have to say, well, at least sample size of one, I can't remember the last time I had a cold. So, or at least anything serious. So it's, yeah, I certainly find that supplementation helps.
No, I think most illnesses and most symptoms we have are due to the what do you call it, the metabolic pandemic, which so many are suffering from. I mean, if you look at the statistics from the COVID of those who have died, I mean, more than 90% of them were people who were sick from before they got to COVID.
Oh, of course. And I thought it was brave, actually, of our Prime Minister to Boris Johnson. I mean, I don't think all of his responses have been brave, but one of the things he did say was, he accepted the obesity problem as being a factor, certainly in Britain, in terms of the death rates for COVID. So I thought that was a very positive statement in some sense. That we're accepting that this issue exists.
And the obesity level in England is far below the one you have in US.
Right. But and a lot of that is down to the quality of the food that's available.
Yeah, it is.
It's not all just about personal choice, right? A lot of it is the environment and what foodstuffs are easily available for people.
All right, Richard. I think I've come to the end of my curiosity regarding Richard.
Thank you. Well, I've really enjoyed it. I felt a bit uncomfortable when you were grilling me on my research methods, and definitely give me food for thought there. Could I be a little bit more intentional, a bit more structured in how I prepare? It's definitely take away.
The questions there I mainly raised these questions as a service to the viewers.
Yeah, no, I appreciate where it's coming from.
You are not there to serve the interviewees, but to serve the viewers.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And most of these questions I've raised is similar to my own needs.
Yeah. Well, you could have just come out and said it. Yeah.
Okay.
But no, so I appreciate that, and yes, and I think I don't want to leave this chat without acknowledging you. You're 80, right?
Yes, I'm 80. Yes.
And you serve as a continued inspiration. You're 80. You're playing saxophone. You're playing piano. You're making your murals out of tiles. You're fit. You're still doing press-ups every day.
I started the Wim Hof method last week.
Wim Hof. Tell us about Wim Hof.
Month. Wim Hof is a Dutch guy with breathing exercises, keeping your breath for 5 times 2 minutes, which is a healing process.
Yeah, and he's famous for his cold work, right? The fact that he can endure.
Oh yeah. So that's something which in my package there. I'm taking cold showers every morning now, ice cold showers. That's why I'm 80 and still fit.
That's still fit, yeah.
I don't think it's because I have extremely good genes. I don't think so. I think in spite of decent genes, I have good living and it's not only physical and food. I mean, emotionally, you need to be happy as well.
Well, you're continuing to do the trauma release work, right? It's not like you've stopped doing that work, right? The primal.
No. It's always at hand. I don't need it very much. I don't need it. I'm extremely lucky there. I feel really healed.
Yeah, that's great.
So, but I mean, I've been through it for almost 40 years. So it's high time. I can reap the benefits. The benefits of what I read in 1974.
Yeah, that crazy book.
Yeah,
that got so much stick.
Yeah, it was really a crazy book. There was a few good things in it, but
well,
you can criticize a lot. But the man behind it was a hero, no doubt.
Arthur Janov, right?
He was such a gentle, fine person. So
yeah, and if anybody were to read his Wikipedia page, you'd think he was some terrible cult leader, but he is.
The interesting thing, if you read a lot of the old critics, they considered him some arrogant. I never had a feeling of he was arrogant.
No, I met him as well, and he was a gentle, kind man. And a genius, I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah, in a way, he was absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, once again, thank you very much. I've really appreciated
Richard. All the best for your
the
future.
gentle grilling, the light toasting.
Yeah, maybe I was too gentle, but I need to work on my agreeableness, you see.
Good. Well, yes, thanks again. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Jan, and have a wonderful Christmas.
Okay.
In Spain, right? You're not
You
in
too,
your
Richard.
native Sweden. You're in Spain for Christmas.
No, I prefer to stay in Spain because you can't meet people, you can't join them for dinners or parties, so I prefer to stay here. I have my daughter here.
Yeah.
So we spend Christmas together.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks again.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.